Very good. Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephanie Langley, and as Rachel said, I'm an intervention specialist at Cassingham Elementary. This is my first year full-time at Bexley. Last year, I was a long-term sub in special education and then had the privilege of coming on staff full-time this year. Various backgrounds. I was a principal at a developmental disability school, a special ed director, and I've taught special needs preschool through grade 8. So lots and lots of years of experience, and actually I came out of retirement to do this year. So very, very excited to be here. This evening, I want to talk about the future planning piece of the IEP. So Rachel, if you want to move to the next slide for me. Thank you. So when we look at the first section of the IEP, this is specifically in regards to future planning. And the beginning statement is directly from the Ohio Department of Education. It says that this statement is to discuss the child's future, and that the IEP team has a responsibility to make sure that the family and the child's preferences and interests are part of the planning process. Some of the items that we make sure that we address in this section are around the plans for future education that we get from the parent and sometimes the student, depending on the student's age. Also, plans for future employment for any students that are ages 13 and above. The student's skills and interests in relation to education and employment, and then future planning statement from the IEP team. This might be asked in an IEP meeting as, what would the team like the student to accomplish over the next year? And then we ask the parents and the teachers to complete student input forms from which this information is gleaned. So Rachel, if you turn to the next page, please. Excuse me. Allergies are really bad right now. So we look at one thing at the parent positive student profile. So as a parent, you will be asked to fill out a page that will gather all of this information that we would like to have to add to various sections of the IEP, but in particular, the future planning section. There are questions around the place in the family, the child's likes and dislikes, their preferences, how you see their strengths and interests, what are the skills and successes that you see with them as a parent, what are the educational concerns that you have. So just in general, but also very specific to goals that are addressed on their current IEP. Any accommodations that we as a team should be thinking about. They could be on their current IEP or things that may have come up since the writing of the last IEP that we need to consider adding this year. Hopes for the students' future education. What are you hoping that they're going to be able to accomplish over this next year? And then relevant medical and safety information, because honestly, there are times where that changes from IEP year to IEP year. We want to make sure that information is up to date. So filling this out really helps to give us a snapshot of how you see your own child, and we want to include that information in the IEP. So Rachel, if you go to the next slide, please. So the teachers are also asked to fill out the student profile form, and they have a separate form. And what we ask them for are the students' academic strengths and needs, some examples of things that they do really well in their classroom, any behaviors that they might be seeing in the classroom. This could be just in general or things that are specific to goals that the teachers know are in the child's IEP. Is there anything new behavior-wise that's coming up? And I'm not necessarily talking strictly about acting out behaviors that, you know, they might be needing to use that CPI or whatever, you know, not just necessarily those types of behaviors, but could also be executive functioning type behaviors where they're really struggling to be on task and start assignments on time on their own and things like that. Again, any accommodations that they might see that we need to talk about that perhaps we're not using with the student right now. And then any recent district and statewide testing that scores that we have just taken, and we need that to have that updated information in the IEP. And that will look a little bit different this year since we didn't do any spring testing. So next slide, please. All right, and I'm going to mute myself so that Colette can join me.
Thanks, Stephanie, so much. There's a lot that goes into that section, and I know you helped give us those forms to get that information, because I know parents felt a little uncomfortable at the meeting. What's the goal for your child? And it's like, oh, let me think about that on the spot, and that was a little difficult. Good evening, everyone. My name is Colette Young. It's really great to be here. I want to thank all the parents for being here as well. You're your child's #1 advocate. So the fact that we have such a large group coming to hear us talk about the different sections of the IEP is pretty cool. To tell you a little about myself, this was a career change for me when I immigrated from Canada. So you might hear a bit of an accent when I say out and about, but I couldn't work until I got my green card. So I've always worked full time. I had a completely different career in Canada. I worked for IBM Canada for 10 years in business. I started volunteering at the local public school, and they asked me if I wanted to work in an intervention room. I didn't even know what it was, but I gladly did it, and I fell in love with this job. This is a calling, and it's a gift to work with kids. So your team at the school, we take writing these IEPs very seriously, and we're going to talk about the profile section, and you'll see why, in case you ever move to another district. It's very important that we have a good snapshot of your child, and it's the whole child. It's just not a test score. So we want to make sure that the information in the profile is meaningful. On a positive note, as parents, you might want to know that we've had some really excellent training in the district. Sam has provided training, so you should be seeing more consistent IEPs, similar language, similar headings. And I think that will help you as parents too, because you'll get an idea, oh, this is the profile. This is where I'm going to see that big picture of my child. It's what I look at when I get an IEP. I go right to the profile because it will tell me their child's strengths and backgrounds. So I know what their strengths are, what their favorite subjects are, the books they like to read, their favorite classes, and why they have an educational plan to start with. And it's complicated. So I know you're sitting there listening to Stephanie and I, and it's a lot of verbiage. I remember my first IEP meeting as a professional, and all the acronyms like, CPI, SLD, OHI, ETR. I remember sitting there in this job thinking, will I ever learn what all these things mean? I mean, it is a world in its own. It's a lot of legal language. So I think it's great that you're all here to learn more about it and to see how we see it. It's a collaborative process. So in the profile section, it's that think big picture. So we start off with background information, the strengths of the child, really get to know them as a whole child, not just why they are getting special ed services. But then in that section under the background should be, when did they start getting services? Maybe they started in a resource room and they've moved into an inclusion setting. So it's more of a least restrictive environment, and that's something to celebrate. And then we also talk about in that background piece, what any concerns of the parent and medical information. And I think it's very important to include outside testing as well. A lot of our kids are very privileged, and they can get they get private outside testing, and quite often we'll have an IEP meeting where the outside psychologist will review the test results and give us recommendations. Those need to be included in the profile as well. So what else goes in there? So we've talked about background, we talked about child's interest and why they qualify for special ed, any outside data that's important, along with recommendations. Then we need to include, we're such a data-driven culture right now, but it's important to know where they are right now. So we look at their recent, here we go with an acronym, evaluation team report. That's what Kristen Rohr reviewed with you the last time. It's called an ETR. Every 3 years, your child has to qualify to get special education services. We look at their progress reports, like, are they meeting their goals? And if they aren't, we need to change the direction we're driving the bus. Because if we're not seeing good progress, we want to shake things up and try different strategies and rewrite the goals and objectives. We want to look at how is this child doing on statewide and district testing? How are they doing in the classroom? Quite often we'll see discrepancies there. We'll see a child that's, an A student in the classroom, but not doing so good on these statewide testing. Maybe it's an anxiousness. Maybe we need to provide test-taking strategies. Maybe there's some generalized anxiety disorder. So we need to look at the child, and it's complex. And related services, that's another fancy term for speech. Occupational therapists, they're wonderful, and they collaborate with us. We work together to provide services for your child. And if your child's on a RIMP, and that stands for a Reading Improvement and Monitoring Plan, how's it going? What are the goals? And are they going to meet that third grade guarantee? What I love about our district is that they believe in early intervention, and so do I. So it's okay that we can't be good at everything. Some of our children have significant needs, especially with reading. And if we get that plan in early and start implementing strategies at a young age, we can see the success. And that's really great as they move up through middle school and high school. So that's it in a nutshell. And Rachel or Jordan, if you want to open it up to questions, that would be cool.